Hey everyone, this is Ben back with you in the Midwest Smile Shop. So today on the Duchess of Kingston, we're moving along with putting the ship together. We're gonna put we're working on the first part of like the final planking. So we're gonna put the whales on, or gunnel, not the gunnels, the whales on, bulwarks, the tops of the ship. You'll see in wood. We're also gonna go ahead and iron out the rest of the stem plate. Bow, I don't know all the names of these things. Basically the keel, the inside and outside of the keel from stem to stern. We're putting those parts on. We're going to get the little rabbet established, and we're going to go ahead and dial in some of the just the little things that need a little tweaking here and there. We'll get all put together. This kit's awesome. I told a buddy of mine, he's like, that's really high praise. But it's true. If this was a plastic model kit, I wouldn't be surprised if it said Tamiya on the side of the box. It's literally falling together as far as I could tell. I mean, for a wooden ship kit, for as much trouble as I usually have with wood kits, this thing is like, it's just happening. It's just going together. I'm really enjoying building it. The engineering is outstanding. The thought process is great. It's working for me. So anyway, I'm having a lot of fun. So what we'll do is we'll wrap up everything that needs to happen on the ship in this episode before we do the final planking. Oh, also the transom. That's it. We're going to do a little bit on the back of the ship in the transom area. All of this is required to get it ready for the final planking. And that's it. So in the next episode, we'll do the final planking. Hopefully I won't screen that up. That'll just be all what it's dedicated to, and then we'll press on from there. So anyway, yeah, sorry I don't know all the names of the parts. I'm having a lot of fun with this. Let's get into the build. I hope you're enjoying it. All right, folks, as we carry on with the Duchess, the next thing I have to do, I think I talked about this last video though, is all this needs to be sanded, but we also want to fill in my unfortunate miscalculating gaps right here. There's one on either side, and then we're going to sand all this down and smooth it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this wood filler that I've had for quite some time. It's just you know, like a putty. Just going to smudge it in there, let it dry smooth, and I'm going to come back and sand all of this down so we have this nice, smooth, even surface. I'm not going to cover showing all that because I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but I do want you to know how we're arriving at that spot. So let me go ahead and accomplish that, and then we'll come back with the next step. Pressing on. Okay, we're back. As mentioned the other day, I went ahead and put a bunch of the wood filler on, and then I sanded down the entire hull. And of course, this was like a giant mess, and I did it outside, and I'm really glad that I did. A quick kind of theological, well, philosophical comment here. I'm not calling this art, but I'm chasing art when I sand this down, at least in terms of practice. And what I'm saying there is I'm trying to get the perfectly balanced contoured shape. I'm shooting for symmetry from one side to another as you sight down the hull, as you lift it up. See how the lines are pretty balanced and symmetrical from side to side. I'm chasing that. And then I want it smooth. Art, you know, I used to be an art student when I was younger, and it's like, what makes something art? How does something end up in a museum? And there's a lot of criteria for that. But one of the things I wanted to talk about with art in terms of the shape is, besides just having the perfect smoothness here, right, and you've made your lines transition and they balance out from side to side, it's about, is it pleasing to the eye? Now obviously you're stuck with the ship build designer's curves here, so no, this might not be considered art or a great piece of art ever, but I am interested in that philosophy, meaning if every person, you know, if you make this 25 times, one of them might have the perfect hull lines that is pleasing to every person's eye on the planet. They just look at it and they go, oh, that looks really nice. It's super natural. It's super organic. That is art. And so I'm chasing that. in my process. You know, same thing with like a model car. Well, hey, you didn't design the car and blah blah blah, but if you can make the finish, the surface finish, pleasing to the eye naturally, every person who looks at it goes, that's an incredible finish. That is art. Anyway, off my soapbox about that. So in the back here, the last thing I want to do, this little transom area, remember I said I was going to fill it in with a block of wood. I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this the right shape, kind of glue it in here, and then I'm going to use sanding sticks or my sander and Dremel and whatever and get this shape filled in, and then we'll press on with the instructions for the next part of the haul. Alright, I'll show a little bit of this here. You can see I just put my little blocks in and then cut them in shape, and then I used a Dremel just to follow this edge and this edge, and this is all basswood or balsa wood, so it's super soft. And I could just take, this is I think 180 grit sandpaper, and we're just going to follow this profile right here. I've already done this side, and then we're going to go ahead and ease a curve over here, right? Just follow this contour here, and this is where our final planking will follow this edge. And roll right on over into the transom. Now, this is super soft wood. I would like it to be a little bit more robust. Looks like we're a little shallow there, but that's okay. And so what I'm going to do, you could take CA glue and douse it, you know, just let this whole piece of wood absorb it, and that would make it really hard and robust. But I think what I'm going to do instead is take my Titebond glue and just skin over this whole thing here. Just let it absorb into the wood, and that will give it a little bit of body and robustness, and it will, flip this over now, we're here. It'll be harder, and it'll allow my next planking, when I finally get to it, to connect. So anyway, that's what we're looking for here, a nice curve. It comes up and around right here, have it match on both sides. And so the final layer of planking will come up and around and terminate right here at the base of the transom, and then we have a piece that we're putting in there and all that stuff. So, all right, filled in, it's nice. Pressing on. All right, here we are with our ship sitting upside down. I was going to deviate from the instructions a little bit, and then I decided, no, I'm going to stick with doing things in the order they want, because this stem post right here, is this the stem post? Yes. This little piece hanging down right here is super duper fragile. It's super duper important, and I've busted it off a couple of times. This whole piece has like a finish piece of wood that slaps on this side and this side, either side of it, and it traces and covers all of this, and so that'll provide some reinforcement that is desperately needed. So I'm going to stick with the instructions, which next have you same thing for the keel. So you've got these really nice little pre-cut out parts. Well, they're not pre-cut out, but they're cut out parts. This is going to be our, I don't know if I would call it a false keel. It's going to be our keel. They drop in real nicely. They can only fit one way. They'll require just the tiniest bit of an alignment, and you're set. I mean, it's really cool. And then I've got my stern post ready to go, and the stern post next will have me slap the two finished side pieces on the alignment, and we'll, you know, I'll throw it on the end here in the stern, and we'll have all this line up, and it'll look nice and fancy. And so I'll glue these in, and what will happen is we'll then put our two side pieces on, and they will leave a gap at the very bottom, right where everything intersects right here. And what that will do is create a little rabbit, which is a groove, where my final planking will be able to slide up into and remain secure. So I'm going to go ahead and glue a few of those pieces up, and we'll get back to you. Okay, while the false keel is drying up, they have you move on to the stern post, basically. This is the middle piece right here, and then these are our finished end pieces that go on it, and then this is like the piece on the back. And as you can see, There's a couple of holes in it right here. They'll be used later for the rudder to attach to. And then you also have this convenient little arrow up, and that way goes up. So what I want to talk about briefly though is, see this tiny little piece of wood? That is a locator pin. The instruction says you go ahead and cut those out. This is the middle stern post. You slide that in there like you see down here, and then you can go ahead and apply your, I guess it would be this one, right? Well, no, it would be, yeah. Anyway, you go ahead and you put these on like so. You can also use, there's little holes down here. They tell you can use brass pins that were brought, including the kit, to stick in there to help guide yourself along. I'm thinking ideally that if these pins are in, that would work the best, right? Because you do have this slot on the finished piece that you have to fill, and so you could just sand off the excess when you're done and it would look really good. What I wanted to let you know is that these are too big. It's better than them being too small, but I mean, look at my fingers. It's difficult to grasp. So this one has fit in because I've already sanded the top and the bottom, and I actually sanded the width a little bit to get it installed. And I think this will be best. What you could do is forgo all of this because it's not particularly complicated. You could start with this piece, glue it to the back of the stem like so, right? And then just take your other pieces and line up the holes and sandwich it all together. You'd be set, and then this gets installed onto the ship. But I'm gonna, and then you could go back and backfill this in with a little piece of wood or something. But I'm gonna try and sand these locator pins down and put it together the way the instructions say. I just wanted to point that out for you. All right, press it on. All right, here's my stern post. Put together, right? This is what it looks like. So the only thing I want to draw your attention to is the bottom of it. If you can see, it's not flat, right? The side pieces hang down just the tiniest bit. And now, when this gets installed, and it fits very nicely, I'll go ahead and stick it in here. I only have one question. Does it come all the way down, like you see there, and there's a slight overlap, or is it supposed to be, there's just a tiny bit of play, is it supposed to be all the way up so that it's flush like that? See what I'm saying? So what I think I'm going to do is glue it into position down with this slight overlap, or so I could glue it in position down with this slight overlap, and then I could just cut it off. That's an issue, because these are just like little alignment holes, don't mean anything. Or what I might do instead is I'll grab the piece here, the outer part of the keel, and I'll measure it and figure out how high it's supposed to go. Regardless, we'll glue this in, and then we'll move on to the next step, and I'll let you know what I decided. Okay, back in action. I opted to drop it down, and I think that was because it's been a few days, sorry, but I measured this next piece of the keel, and I believe that it fits from the down position to here flush, and if not, I'll make a little adjustment. So the next part we have to work on, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't remember the exact reason why. There's a good reason for it. We have to install this transom piece. It goes in like here like this. And what is important to note is that there is a curved line here. It ends, at these key points. And after some studying of the instructions, I've determined that yes, it is supposed to go flush up to that line right there. And then this piece, next piece, it occupies from there to this next natural break. It goes on like so. Fits a little bit better, but it's curved. So that, unfortunately, brings us back to this issue. When I had installed this piece, if you recall, an episode or two ago, this side ended up back a little bit further than it should have. This piece on the port side ended up nice and flush with the end of, I guess, the poop deck back here. And so this one is too long, and now it is a problem. So I'm actually going to have to just commit to sanding or cutting this off to make it flush the back here, because it interferes with how this piece lays, and definitely the next one, the next one on top that goes up here. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this off and get it nice and flush right there. And then this piece is fairly thick. It's about 1.5 millimeters thick, and then it gets curved like so onto the back right here. I'm actually going to go ahead and take my knife and score a bunch of lines back here just to help break the tension of the wood, and then I'm going to soak it so that I can get the bend that I want, so it fits up here nice and curved and not flat like it's doing right now. It's just kind of being difficult. So because this is supposed to be, you can see it right there, it's got that nice concave angle there, and this is flat. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to clean this up, cut a couple of lines with the knife in here, soak it good and long, put it in the heat bender, and make it so that it fits in that section there. All right, I'll be right back.
So this is the part where I forgot to turn my microphone on, so I got to do a quick overdub to explain what's happening here. I went ahead and just sanded that side that I'm pointing at down to match the rest of the transom area, and basically the spot over there on the port side. So they are the same depth there. Everything should fit flush right along. And that means right there where I'm pointing, this lower transom piece is going to fit flush along the outside edge, because it actually hangs over. So I've already scored the back. That's what I'm pointing at right there. This is the front, and I soaked it, and it's already started to bend quite a bit just from having the relief cut into the back of the piece of wood right there. And so now I'm just taking my plank bender and steaming it, because I don't want to wait until tomorrow for it to dry at the angle that I've set and then glue it into position. And this steamer, essentially what we're doing is we're drying the wood very quickly, and that causes it to hold its shape. But it's a thicker piece of wood, and so much heat's absorbed from the wood out of my soldering iron that it actually cools off on me, and so I have to let it sit again to get hot. But basically this is what you do. This is how I'm working it along my little block of wood, a little section at a time, trying to maintain an even curve in order to get what we want. So continue, set this up here, and you're watching it live. It takes about this long, but this really does move the build along, having this steamer and getting things to dry quickly. If you don't have one, it's not a problem. You're just going to have to let your wood dry overnight, because this pear wood shrinks a lot after it's dried. So if you get it wet, form it, glue it into position, you'll be disappointed with the results the next day.
Okay, I just finished that. Sorry I had to do a little voiceover. I didn't have the audio turned on, but you can see it's a much more aggressive curve, and it's dried up, so that should end up working out fairly well here. There you go. I think if you pull this over, can you sight down in here? See how, hopefully you can see it basically follows that contour real tightly. That's what we want. So I'm going to, off camera here, fiddle around with gluing this into position, and then you have excess on the sides, and those will get sanded off. I'm trying to hold things here. Let me glue it, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, I've got this thing in place, and yeah, that's it, right? That's what it looks like. I'm going to have to do a little sanding here from pressing on it with the bending iron. But anyway, there's a nice, fairly aggressive curve. It's actually a little too much, ever so slightly, but just a tiny bit. I don't care. It looks good. And I'm letting that glue dry. And then this transom piece, goes on top, like that. Now it has to actually bend in on the where my thumb and finger are. It needs to come in, and the middle part is out. So hopefully that makes sense, right? Just the tiniest bit. It's not a lot. It's just a little bit. And then you're going to have this kind of a funny, see that dark line right there? So I'm going to take a look at the instructions and a couple of things, and I think I'm going to have to sand a bevel onto here. It's a little high. It sits high, so I can get away with sanding a bevel onto the bottom edge of this so that it mates up nicely with this piece, and we don't have that funny looking line right there. So yeah, give me a few minutes and I'll get back to you with that. Okay, so here's my little piece. I flipped this whole thing upside down, so hopefully you can make out here that it's curved, you know, this way, right? And then I put a pretty aggressive bevel on here. I didn't need to go that much, but it works out because you could put this piece on here like so, and you have a pretty good seam. It's not perfect, but remember, you guys are looking from the bottom up, and if you could get this as tight as you can, glued into position, when you flip it over, you can't see it at all, and it looks really nice. So I'm going to go ahead and get the wood glue out and get this glued into position, let it set up, and then, as you can see here, this sticks out past the edge, so you're going to need to come in and sand that off to match the contour of the hull. So let me knock all that out, and then yeah, we'll press on from there. Alright, so here's our little piece glued on. Looks nice, right? And then I've already gone ahead here, and you can see I put some little pencil lines just to kind of help guide. You see the excess that's sticking out. That all needs to come off. And so, you know, you can do it however you want. If you've got a Dremel, it definitely will speed up the process a little bit. I'm just going to take a little off here, and then I'll dial it in with the piece of sandpaper. Do it by hand. But the instructions tell you to blend it into the hull. So kind of like that, we'll just ferret on in, get this angle the same, because the finishing boards, sorry, I'll shut that off. The finished boards should lay up and over this somehow. So I'll go ahead and sort that out, and yeah, then we'll press on the next stage here. I gotta look at the instructions, see what's next. All right, so this is the next step. I'm really excited about this. We get to put the outer side patterns on, they're called. I think this is our gunnels, technically. Someone will correct me in the comments, but they do get cut out flat, and then we will have to bend them and get them ready to shape and conform to the ship, and then we'll go ahead and install it, and then we'll come back and we'll worry about these parts down here. Now, the instructions let you know that they have left extra at the front. So here's one of the pieces. It's nice and flat, and there is more here apparently than you need, and so that will require some fitting. So what they also warn you about is they're like, they're telling you should let this dry overnight, this piece of wood, before you glue it in place, because they're afraid it'll expand and contract and move a lot. Now, in my experience, I would say that it would be the case if you just soak this and then very carefully wrap it around the model like you see here and clamp it in place with glue. It's going to move. I'd say it's a big no-no. But if you heat the wood with your plank bender, it dries out, and that's what lets it hold its shape. And I would be inclined to do that and then maybe clamp it in position and just let it sit for a while and then come back and test fit it and see where you're at. I don't think it's going to move a whole lot. You can use brass pins to help align things. I might do that. But the first thing's got to happen is these need to get soaked, and then I need to bend it to at least pretend to get that curve right. And there's a couple other shapes in the hull that I want to get incorporated into this piece before I glue it in. This is a huge time saver. That one of the magnificent things about the ship, so many other kits you have to put all of these individual planks in. It's covered over your gun ports, and so you're going to have to go ahead and cut out the squares, or in this case ovals, and you want them to line up right. We don't have to worry about that. Everything here is set and ready to go. So the other thing we have to work out is, as I mentioned before, this one is in the right position, right? But I put our little blank, this one's in the right position, but on the starboard side, right, this thing ended up a little bit aft of where it really needs to go. So when I line this up now, it's a little bit, see how things don't quite line up right? Zoom in like this. So on the inside here, it'll be pretty easy to clean those up. But yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I'm going to have to monkey with this. It might go back a little bit here. We'll see how this all plays out. So anyway, let me get these set up and bent, and we'll start working in position. Press it on. All right, here we are back in action, sort of. This is not glued on. So what I ended up doing was stick it in water for a bunch of time, and the wood became, I think it's pear wood, became super soft and supple, no problems. And I hit it with the heat bender, the plank bender, to get the initial shape. That worked out really well, and then I was like, well, I'm going to go ahead and use the alignment holes back here with some pins, which I stuck in, just to kind of get this thing going. And I came along the front, and then went around and got in position. Up here at the bow, a very tiny bit of sanding was required to get that joint to match up. So then I was worried about this side, remember, and what I ended up doing was just going ahead and committing to putting in the holes, even though they are slightly off, right, from port to starboard. But what I discovered was there seems to be just the tiniest bit of excess material in the back that I can remove to get the transom area to match up. So that actually is really convenient. So I went back to clamping the heck out of this and I put, again, a couple of the nails in to line things up. And then what I did here in the bow is I really went on my way to try and get this as close as possible to matching up on both sides. Now, like the Haas holes, I think that's what those are up here. You know, the piece in the back doesn't quite line up. I don't know what exactly is going on there, but it conforms to the holes here, and it comes around and it lines up right up here on the top with where the bowsprit's going to come out. It's possible that I have it a little low, but if I raise it up, then this hole doesn't line up at all, and right now it matches perfectly. So I imagine something moved a little bit during my alignment process, but I'm super pleased with how this looks. So what I'm going to do, and it follows along here, there's a couple little, like that curves up just a hair there, and what we got in the back here, I think it's pretty good over there. I'm trying to get my focus. On this side, right in here, it raised up a little bit. See how it trends along, and then goes whoop, and then back down. Not really sure why that's the case. We'll just have to be mindful of our first plank, that I allow some extra to go up there so that it fits in. Or maybe not. I'm going to check down the road. If there's a whale that goes through here or some other plank, we'll sort that out. So, but basically, the big important thing is it's just clamped up, right? I again did a little bit of the heating with the plank bending here, but I like that it's seated nicely along our support piece here and nicely along the bottom, and I've got it clamped in a couple of key places to hold the shape that we want, and I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to let it air dry. I know it's going to move, especially over like here on this side. This starboard piece got a lot of extra time in the water, and man, we were making some steam up here in the bow, and when I clamped it in position and I put in my little spotter nails, things didn't quite line up here, and as it's drying, it's moving, which is why the instructions say, hey, if you just do this thing wet and stick it on with some glue, you better leave it overnight. Actually, you shouldn't do that. You should clamp like this and let it dry overnight because it's going to move a lot. If you put glue on it, it can yank and pull on the model and do things, and you can get some funny marks in the wood. So, I'm not finished with this little phase yet. We're just going to leave it probably overnight. We'll see. I mean, it's drying. None of this was in the water. It only went from here up submerged. This is all conforming extremely well. This is where the pressure in the wood's at. This is where it's got to dry, and it's probably 3/4 dry already just from the plank bending heater. So yeah, and then I do want to, it's important to emphasize again here, getting this fit pretty good, and see, you can actually see it's pulling away. I had it tight. As it's drying, it's shrinking a little bit. Nice and tight up against our false stem piece, because we're going to put laminations on either side of this, and they're going to go on top of the gunnels here, and it will lock this piece in. And that's why I wanted to do this first, but I realized, no, you have to put these gunnels on, I'm going to call them gunnels, so that this locks it in when we put that laminate piece on top. As far as these holes right here go that don't appear to be lining up, hey, when we're done, I'll run a drill through there and clean out the inside. Like, who really cares? We're not going to fuss about that. So, very pleased with how this is setting up. I feel like it's going to dry the best way possible. So I'm going to let it dry. I'll come back and I'll get some glue going and put it in. Oh, and one last comment. I was a little hesitant to use these little brass nails in here. I'm like, they're not really doing anything. They actually are. When you stick them through, even if they just go free floating through, they do help align things. And I probably will use them when it comes to the gluing process. And I could put a couple of rubber bands back here on the stern, and I'll do that when we apply the glue. But for now, for this initial shaping, I mean, it's holding. I mean, it might come in a little bit, right? Like, who cares? This is really great. So I'm super satisfied with this. I just have a mandatory break built into my day now, really. I mean, I could get these pieces out and prep them. That's not a real big deal. So yeah, I'm going to go take it easy. Let this dry, and we'll come back and glue it all up. Pressing on. All right, back in action. I think it's time we slather some glue on. So this is what our piece ended up looking like. It's fairly complicated. It comes around and tilts to the side and everything. So what I did though is, let's see, I drew just a light pencil line so I know where to slap some glue on here. And then I've got a gazillion clamps ready to go. And we're going to go ahead and start with the installation process here. So yeah, I'm just going to spread some glue around here real quick with a brush on both surfaces, trying not to make a mess. And then we'll clamp it on. We'll do the other side. I have decided I am going to use the little brass nails. They're going to be like key for back here. I mean, I'll put some rubber bands around it. I'm going to lay like a piece of wood on there and put some rubber bands on to provide pressure. But the nails will definitely help with aligning everything. And that's going to be pretty important. It's also important that I get plenty of glue right up here in the bow along the center here, but not too much. I don't want it squishing out everywhere and making a mess. Like that. Alright, and then this is our piece, so we'll go ahead and get glue on here next, then we'll put it together. Alright, our glue's applied. I'll see if I can do this without putting too many fingers in the way here. But we'll just like start out in the middle and put the clamp down and just kind of work our way back here. Like so. Up here in the front is kind of like the most important part. And I've got a little bit of a gap right here. Not too bad. Yeah, it draws itself in nice when I put that clamp on. Well, actually, you know what? I probably should have worked my way forward here first. There we go. Like that. Alright, so let me just continue on around and get some nails in. Well, they say you can never have enough clamps. So the whole thing's on. What we've got going on back here are some rubber bands. Pressure's going in at the top. It's plenty of glue in the middle, but because of the way this is kind of concaved, I need a beam across the bottom here to put pressure on the bottom of the board just to make sure it's up against the hull. Same thing on the other side, it's nice and even. This side went together fine. I glued it up earlier and then had to take a break and come back, so that's why you see some clamps up on this side. Generally speaking, I'm happy. I'm a little nervous, I guess, right? Because it's a lot of clamps and I'd hate to see something off. But not too worried about it. The big deal is right here in the front, and I don't know if you're going to see, all of our lines line up as perfectly as I can possibly get them, which is the most important part, right? I'm going to let this sit overnight. Shouldn't be a problem, should be plenty dry in the morning. I noticed that on some of the cannon holes on our port side here, it didn't seem like they lined up as well. Maybe they shifted up a little bit more in reference to the inside piece. But the windows over here and everything are just fine over here to the right. And so they're good. So, you know, my plan is to clean up that inside piece. It's just, you know, like kind of the middle of a piece of a plywood arrangement. I'll clean that up anyway. Further down the road once we've got all these other parts off. So anyway, that is going to be it for this little section. And what I hope to do after this is dry is go ahead and get the rest of our keel and stem in, and then that should wrap up this section of the video. We just got to let these clamps dry. So again, can never have enough clamps, can never have enough rubber bands. All right, pressing on. Okay, I've removed the clamps up here. We'll do all that kind of big reveal later. It's really more important to move along. And on the bow, and I'll show you it later, I've gone ahead and glued on the outside part of the stem post. It's decorative, it's nice. But I wanted to move on to kind of a slightly more important thing here. So, make sure you guys could see this. This is the rest of our keel, right? The outside, and it sets on here like so. And I wanted to put the bow piece on first because I was concerned that it might stick out past the end. And in fact, it does. These little holes don't line up. I've been using like just a needle pin or whatever to kind of, you know, guide these things in their back. If I bend the board, I can get it to drop down in to where it needs to go. No problem, right? We just trim a little bit off of the front, and then it'll fit in just like we're supposed to. But I also, and you will run into this, had a little bit of an issue. I did something, I should have noted it earlier in the instructions. So the way the final planking works in real life is that it should end up running flush directly into the stern post and the keel. Unfortunately, that's exactly what's happening right now, right? This is flush right here, which in the instructions I was looking more closely and I realized, oh, he didn't even put, like this area of boards wasn't even on here. As we move forward, right along, right about there, it's still curving down, and so like if this was a plank, it would just kind of terminate like this into the keel, and that's fine. You can put a little bevel. It touches. This is creating a little rabbit joint. When we put this on here, there you go. There's a space. See that gap? That's supposed to be there so you can slot your piece of planking into there. But in the back here, I have too much wood. Same on both sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get a chisel and I'm going to remove a lot of this wood. So starting somewhere up in here, we transition down to 0 very nicely and naturally, so that my final planking will end up laying on the MDF that's underneath here and going on in. I wish I'd gotten that right earlier because this is going to eat up a bunch of time correcting that. But you will run into the same mistake or same issue. I mean, you could do it. You could leave it, but what will end up happening is your final planking is going to be sitting on top like this, and you're going to have that line, and that's not correct, right? It should butt flush into it, just like that. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. I'll remove this wood, and then when I'm satisfied with that, and I'm satisfied that I have a good gap along here for my rabbet, because this is a little tight, I think I'm going to get a piece of wood out of the planking wood to make sure I have the right distance there, because I can remove some of this wood if I need to as well. I'll go ahead and glue this on with the little pegs and everything, and then we'll wrap up this episode. All right, pressing on. All right, this is it. End of the episode. So we have installed our whales, gunnels. I guess the gunnels go on top, as that's the word, and this is the bulwarks. Maybe, I don't know. You guys will correct me in the comments down below, but super happy with how this literally is just falling together. For a wooden kit, I'm blown away. Some points of interest, we want to make sure, and the little exception would probably be right up here in the bow. Want this to be nice and flat along our hull here, and I've got a little raised spot right here, but I'm not going to sweat it. When we lay our planking around there, it's going to work out fine. Just a little bit of sanding will even it out, and then we're going to put, our whales and things like that on there anyway. In the back, had a little bit of that to do. Right here, you'll see a little spot. I sanded that down through the plywood here because as I was eyeballing things, if you can see, from this direction, there was a little hump right there. And, that's just pro tip for when you're eyeballing along here. You want to make sure it's nice and even and that you don't have any little inconsistencies like that, because when we go to lay our final layer of planking down, it will be a problem. So you just kind of want to eyeball all those things. Down here, both sides, I kind of ran this down to 0. No problem. I did end up with a tiny gap here on this side of the keel. No problem on that side of the keel. I did have to trim the tiniest little bit in the front, probably a little too much right there, but it's fine. Maybe I'll put some sand, put some glue there and hit it with some sand or dust, sandpaper and a piece of wood to create some dust and drop it in there to fill it. I don't know. I like that there's a space there. Like here's the little split in the wood that's been put in with the laser. I don't really want to lose that detail. I mean, all this is supposed to get painted white, but I still want some of these things to kind of show, I guess, if that makes sense, if we get up close to it. While we're over here, the rabbet joint turned out very nice. Let's see if we can sight down that. There we go. I think you can see there's a rabbet joint here, and it looks nice. And it's even on both sides. Runs down the length of the keel, and I took a strip of the pearwood planking, and it slid right in there nicely. I had to do up on the bow here just a little bit of trim work right in there to make sure that it would fit in, and it fits nice and snug up here. No problem. I did run into a slight issue, or I will down the road here. Up in the bow on the port starboard side, this piece of wood ended up out forward just a hair farther than it should have, and I found that out the last second when I glued this piece on. And I had to while the glue was wet, like cut a little chamfer in here so that this piece would sit flush. Well, I didn't nail it. I was real close, but it ended up pushing this piece of trim forward just the tiniest bit, and you can see it from on top right here. See right here on the left how that little piece is sticking out just the tiniest bit, and you can see how this bulwark is just forward of that one. So, you know, over here it fit nicely, no troubles, and here it ended up pushing forward a little bit. So what consequently, I mean, yeah, I'll just sand this down a little bit and it'll be fine. Consequently, right in here I've got a little bit more space in my rabbet joint. And so because this whole thing kind of flares forward to the bow, I'll probably stick a tiny little piece of wood in there, just a little filler strip up against the first layer of planking, and that will push the second layer of planking out forward just a little bit so that it pinches into this gap nice and tight. Down here, all of this fit really well. Yeah, we're good to go. All of my these little blocks, I had to sand them down just slightly thinner and take a little bit off the width to get them to fit into place. Let's see. Yeah, and then this piece is, you know, zoom out, looks really nice. I'm super happy with how well this is going together. This has been a lot of fun. Back here, let's talk about this. So I've looked ahead in the instructions, and what we're going to do is have the planking come and end flush with this piece of wood right here. And on this side, because things are a little bit different, you can see that this sticks out just past my top piece a little bit. I can sand that down just a little bit to transition in, but right now I'm going to leave it. And I think I'm going to bring my planking out flush with this edge and cut off, because a ton of decoration and parts get laid over on top of all of this down the road, and I just don't think it's really going to matter. I'd kind of rather leave things and either add a little strip of wood to balance it out with the starboard side, or be able to sand this side down instead of sweating all of that tomfoolery. Right down here, this has worked out really well. The wood goes to 0, and so my planking is going to terminate directly into the back end of the keel here, or the rudder. The rudder will be in the back, but the rudder post. It will get interesting here. I don't know with the width of the wood which plank's going to end up terminating. So, like, how is it going to end up wrapping around this corner, and like there's no rabbet here up on top. I'm going to have to look at the instructions some more and some photographs and decide how, when I wrap this around, is it going to terminate. It might just butt into this, and then we'll have an interesting transition right at that corner right there. That'll be sorted out in the next episode, because in the next episode I'm going to devote it entirely to, sorry, my hand's in the way there, entirely to planking the hull up. We're going to do the final planking, and that's all we're going to do, and it's going to take quite a bit of time. And then We'll worry about cleaning up these holes and everything like that down the road. But yeah, fun project. It's going extremely well. I'm super, super pleased, and I wouldn't hesitate at this point to say if you've never bought or built a wooden ship kit, spend the money and get this one because it's going together super well. Also, because all my clamps, I was super stoked to see that like right in here, I don't know if you can see it, it kind of curves around, it's straight up and down, right? And then it kind of leans out, and then even right here, it cups back in just a little bit, like it's supposed to, like I had with my my first piece of wood that I put in there to follow that profile of the planks here, or the bulkheads here, just to get the profile. When you wet the pear wood, I didn't realize how malleable it is. It'll easily bend and take shape and conform to whatever you push it up against, and that was just really rewarding and satisfying. I think you can see here, especially on the left, how it's concaved, this little curve right here, and you got this little curve right here, not maybe quite as well. There you go, a little curve right there. Just those little details, you want them uniform, and man, it adds up, and it looks great. So anyway, I'm super excited. That's it. Press on. Everyone be safe. We'll talk to you next time.